Okay, very good. So good evening, and thank you for joining us and taking the time out to provide us with your comments, questions, and your input. As Issa stated, I'm Keisha Lara, Code Supervisor over the Central East Neighborhood Team for the Austin Code Department. And I will start our presentation off, and then halfway through, I will turn it over to Code Supervisor Moses Rodriguez. So with that being said, let's get started. So we are here to present the 2021 International Property Maintenance Code, and I will refer to that as the IPMC during our presentation. The purpose of the presentation is to provide an overview of the 2021 IPMC amendment process and share the major proposed changes. The City of Austin will adopt the International Code Council's 2021 IPMC updates from the current 2015 IPMC. Austin Code Department established an amendment committee to draft proposed amendments to the code. Purpose of proposed changes is to ensure public safety and maintain consistency with other codes. And it's our goal to be able to work closely with property owners because we want to ensure that residents are provided with a minimum standard of living. So first we have here to show you where we currently are on the 2021 code adoption timeline. We're in the month of March. And as you know, tonight we are doing the public and stakeholder process, which begins, like I said, we want to gather your input and recommendations because I think it's only beneficial to have a sound code where we gather all input from all valuable stakeholders. So the proposed amendments aim to ensure public safety when unsafe or hazardous conditions are found on a property by requiring item number 1, an action plan for repairs from the property owner, and item number 2, approved accommodations for the occupants. So the first section that we wanted to address was the structure unsafe for human occupancy, which is section 111.1.3. And we want to add the following language. If the code official finds a structure unsafe, the owner of the property shall provide an action plan for repairs to the code official and provide approved accommodations for the occupants of the structure within 2 days of notice. Going to the next section is for plumbing system hazards, which is section 504.3. And the language throughout each section is basically the same. It's just tailored to the appropriate section. So if the code official finds a plumbing system hazard, the owner of the property will provide an action plan for repairs to the code official and provide approved accommodations to the occupants of the structure within 2 days of notice. The next section is water heating facilities, section 505.4. If the code official finds that water temperatures are below 110 degrees Fahrenheit, the owner of the property shall provide an action plan for repairs to the code official and provide approved accommodations for the occupants of the structure within 2 days of notice. And we wanted to add it to each section because we can have different scenarios at different properties. So we just wanted to make sure that we capture each scenario that we could think of instead of just placing this language in one section and not having regulation or authority to address issues in all sections, because one property could just have, as we say here, a water heating facility hazard, and another property could have a structural, plumbing, electrical, all of the above. So our goal is to make sure that we're capturing all of the different scenarios so that we can better assist the residents of Austin. Section 602.2, residential occupancies. If the code official finds that the room temperature does not maintain a minimum of 68 degrees Fahrenheit in all habitable rooms, the owner of the property shall provide an action plan for repairs to the code official and provide approved accommodations for the occupants of the structure within 2 days of notice. So I am going to turn it over to my cohort, Code Supervisor Moses Rodriguez.
Thank you, Keisha. So as Keisha mentioned before, we wanted to be sure to address all the violations that could come across. We could have a property with electrical, could have everything there that it's electrical, but just the gas is the only one that's not working. And at that time, we will be able to cite it and ask for this plan of action if the code official finds that the plumbing system. So in under the ICC code, we don't have a section for gas itself. And in the city of Austin, it falls under the plumbing. So for them to repair a gas leak or repair a gas failure, they have to pull a plumbing permit. And that's why we would cite a plumbing system hazard. And it says if the code official finds a plumbing system hazard, the owner of the property will provide an action plan for repairs to the code official and provide accommodations to the occupants of the structure within 2 days of the notice. So that's what we're wanting to bring to the table. These accommodations, as Miss Laura has explained before. Next slide, thank you. So we could have we had one instance in this this winter storm, where we had hot water, we had gas, but the heater system, it was controlled through a chiller system, and that's the reason it didn't have heat. So this one's for water heating for 110 degrees, where it's not provided that they would have to provide an action plan and accommodations within 2 days. And we understand they fix it in 2 days, but if it's not, if they're ordering the part, um, if they're not finding plumbers, I mean, we want at least a plan of action. What is the next step? What is it that you've done? And that's what we have. I think we went back or something. Plumbing, yeah, that was plumbing, and then this was the plumbing one, and then the next one. Water heating. Okay, so we're going the right way. So it was the plumbing, and this one is particular to the water heater, where they have to provide a minimum 110 degrees Fahrenheit for every faucet in the house, shower, kitchen faucet, shower, bath faucet has to reach 110 degrees. And if it's not happening, then we would ask for an action plan and accommodations. Next slide. Here's the heating supply. We have put in our ordinance in the able to say that they could provide electric heaters, but that cannot be the permanent source. We would never ask for them to use a stove. That's a no-no. But they can provide electric heaters for the time being, and the ordinance says for a temporary base. But in the meantime, we still need that permanent source. We need that mini split working. We need the AC unit with a heat pump, or we need the AC fix, or like I told you all the scenario, they had hot water, they had everything working to the property, they just didn't have heat because it was controlled through a chiller system, and that wasn't working. It had failed, and that's why they weren't having heat. We didn't get a call on it. I know I saw it on the news, and then within a day or two, it was turned back on, or that same day, I think it was turned back on. But that's why we're trying to put it in all areas so we can capture every type of scenario that can happen out there. Next slide. Electrical hazards. So again, we can have a house with it comes to mind she had hot water, she had AC, she had heat because it was propane, but the electrical was not working. So this is where we would be able to cite it if for that unit they don't have. If the code official finds that the electrical system in the structure constitutes a hazard to the occupants or the structure by reason of inadequate service, the owner of the property shall provide an action plan for repairs to the code official and provide approval accommodations to the occupants to the structure within 2 days. So we're trying to capture whether it has gas, it has hot water, but then there's no electrical. And we could have this in summer where there could be no electrical, and we could be able to cite this also. Next slide. This is a process that Ms. Keisha Lara told y'all that we're going through the motions. We had the ACD internal committee. We had ACD proposed recommendations. We're in March with a public and stakeholder process. Then in April, we're going to have feedback finalized. Our commissioners or our board is through Building Standards Commission, which is abbreviated there, Building Standards Commission. They would hear our recommendations. It would go to council in June or July, and hopefully will be approved through September. We're all going together, all the ICC codes, the existing building code, the IRC, the IBC. I know the fire is still working on things, the IFC, but the IBC and the IRC, they're moving along with us. So we're hoping to be there in June or July. Next slide. And we're open for questions and answers that y'all might have for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Keisha and Moses. So that was the presentation that we have. If anybody has any questions, feel free to type them in the chat, or feel free to either unmute your mic or raise your hand, and we will, you can ask the questions. We have here again Keisha, Moses, and Diedrich from our operations team that can answer any questions. There's also, if you don't have any questions, you can also email them to us at codecommunications@austintexas.gov, and we will be able to answer those questions. All right, so we'll open up the floor to see if anybody has any questions at this point. All right, no questions. The other way that you can also provide feedback is that we have a public input page. So we have a website where you can look at the annotated changes, and you can provide your feedback that way, and provide your feedback and take a look at those documents. One of our teammates will go ahead and include the link in the chat. Thank you. All right. With that, Keisha, Diedrich, or Moses, is there anything else that y'all had wanted to add or wanted to let the public know about the process or anything like that?
I didn't hear her, Lucero.
I don't know if it's my system,
It's
but
okay. So if anybody has any questions, you can go ahead and drop them into the chat. If you Moses and Diedrich or Keisha, do you guys have anything else you would like to share tonight?
I do not.
I'll go ahead. Um, so this is one of the things that we're asking the community. Um, last time around, we asked for your input on several items that we're presenting. One of them was carbon monoxide, and it was through your voice that it got adopted. And now we've been recognized and being seen through other cities and throughout the country as being one of the premiers in the state of Texas to adopt carbon monoxide. So if there's something that you've seen or have been thinking, well, that should be in a code somewhere, or that should be something that the inspectors, please put it in the chat, or you could do it through the public comments. As she said, we're still going to be doing this, I think, throughout the whole month of March. But we've had some comments and we reviewed them, and one of the things that, like, it was asked about insect screens. We would like to bring it back, but we had stakeholder input. We had many meetings, and we didn't have the support to put that in an ordinance. So things like that, we end up challenging and preparing and putting all this together, to meetings together, to adopt something. But that carbon monoxide was adopted, address was adopted. What's interesting, I've been here 15 years, is we always thought fire did address and EMS, but EMS thought that fire did it, and fire thought we did it. So now it's in our ordinance, and we adopted. We're able to cite it as we go to a property, and they don't have they have high weeds, they have trash. We can also add we can add address into that. We can cite it. We go into a house and there's gas appliance and no carbon monoxide. We can address it. We can cite it and bring it to the owner's attention to put it. So please, if there's anything, please put it in the chat or in the public comments later. Thank you.
Moses, just to clarify, so insect, let's go back to your example for insect screens. People are wanting the Austin Code Department to have mandatory insect screens or not have the insect screens. What are the people, what are we asking the people to have input on in some of these situations? You said the insect screen, you said carbon monoxide, and you said addressing. Is it mandatory for homes to have an address? And if you're saying, this is something that will fall under codes umbrella, then please clarify that. I hope that I'm being clear here.
Yes. I'm gonna go with the carbon monoxide and the address. Right now, that's still in the ordinance. Screens is not, it is not part of an ordinance. It is not, it is something we've deleted from the ordinance, so we do not have it adopted. In the 2015, we adopted addressing, we adopted carbon monoxide. That is in place. So when we go to a property and we're there just for high weeds and grass, and we don't see addressing, we can cite it, and we can send a notice of violation and tell them they have to correct it within 30 days. That would be addressing. Carbon monoxide would be 7 days. Smoke alarm missing would be 7 days. Most all the structure violations would be 30 days. But that's what's on the table. And right now, what we're asking is if there is something that they've thought about, or they thought, and they might ask, why hasn't that? Like, for example, in San Antonio, I know that they have address in the front, and many of the rear properties, they have adopted that address is mandatory in the rear of the properties. So we haven't gone that route. So right now, address is just has to be on the perimeter, on the structure itself. It can be on the sidewalk, on the driveway, it could be on the mailbox, it could be on the house, but it has to be somewhere in the primary structure. So that's what we have right now. But That's what we're wanting to that's just an example. Addressing and carbon monoxide that's already in place in the ordinance, and what we're bringing to the table is the plan of action that we don't have. We can ask pretty please. Well, now I can cite the landlord. You haven't given me. Did y'all see that question? I know there's something there.
Yes, I can repeat that question, and
Okay.
translators can also repeat it in their language. Would the plumbing code change help the folks in the East Austin apartment complex who were without water longer than the rest of Austin?
No, that's across the board. That's across the board. It could be any property that they're not having any of these items that aren't working. And in that case, in that situation, it was no gas, but we could have no water working. We could have no heat. So that's why the plan of action is something, it's a tool that will be given to us as inspectors for us to. Right now, the only thing we can say is pretty please give us an action plan. What are you going to do for accommodations? Well, now we can ask for it, and if it's not provided to us, then we can be able to cite it. In other words, issue a notice of violation or give a citation because they haven't provided us a plan of action. But it's going to be across the board. It can be from an A property to a B property to a D property that we're going to be able to cite this. So not just a certain area of town, but yes, those scenarios are examples that we have of people providing us action plans of what they're doing. They're providing hotels, they're providing meals, they're bringing hot plates. All those things are examples. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Moses. A follow-up question to that was also, if this happens again, would they be moved to a hotel? So a question could be like, what is considered an accommodation for when
Yeah.
when an emergency like this happens, just like we had this winter storm? What would constitute accommodation?
It could vary. I mean, in that scenario, that property itself, they had to bring in showers, mobile showers. They had to bring mobile washer and dryers. They had to provide meals because the gas was their heat source. That was their cooking source, and that was their bathing source. So that they needed hot water to bathe. They needed hot water to cook. They needed the heating. They had no heat, so they provide some space heaters. Accommodations that we're looking at, they're providing space heaters, of course, on a temporary basis, and that they're going to provide hotels. I had one property that leased out some rooms in a hotel, and they were using it, and they had time slots for showers, so they continue to have slots for these people. So they had heat, they had water, they just didn't have hot water to bathe. So that was an accommodations that they did. um it's we know it's not going to be able to happen where they're going to be able to accommodate. I mean, that one of the properties that I had was 384 units. I mean, we know that's kind of hard for that to happen, but what are they doing? That one with no gas, it was 100 units, so it was challenging. But we need some kind of action plan to happen.
So
And-
Moses, just to clarify,
Yes.
the code, the amendments in the code would then ask those property managers to provide approved accommodations. So what is code's role when asking for that? Like, what does that process look like?
We're just the examples. You know, they're
So-
gonna bring in showers, or they're gonna bring in hot plates, skillets, for a temporary basis. While now this winter storm is a one in a lifetime or every 100 years, but on normal properties throughout any storm, any winter, um, a gas is gonna happen. A gas leak's gonna happen, and they're not gonna have where they're not gonna be able to provide gas to the property. What are they doing for a temporary basis? Have they gave them accommodations? Sometimes I've had scenarios where they're able. We had a fire not so long ago. They just moved everybody to vacant apartments, or they move them to sister property. But that was 20 units, 10 units. But when you're talking 100, 300, what are they doing? You know, what are they going to bring? So every scenario, I wish we could just write it down. We can't, but we want some kind of action plan. And instead of me asking pretty please, I can now, within the third day or the fourth day, you haven't provided me an action plan of what you're doing. You haven't told me what you've accommodated them with, so I can write a ticket for that.
So these,
And-
so you're, I'm sorry, Keisha, you want to go?
Yeah, so, and also to piggyback off of Moses, when he talks about the owner giving us a plan of action, the reason why we want to see it is so that we can say, yes, what you've listed here will meet all of the minimum standards, meaning, yes, they can take a hot shower, they can have a hot meal, they can wash clothes. That's the reason why we want it in writing, so that it will be our procedure to review it. And if something is not on there, or something on there that doesn't make sense or it's not logical, we can say, well, we need an amendment, or you need to tell us what you're going to do to give this person hot water. And for the question itself, when it asks, would they be moved to a hotel? We can't say yes or no. As Moses said, every scenario is different. So that is why we're asking for a plan of action. Moving to a hotel could be one particular owner's option. They may be able to do that. Another apartment complex may have sister company apartment complexes, like Moses said, and instead of moving them to a hotel, they may move them or allow them to go to a sister property. But it's not a guarantee. So I don't want it to be misconstrued that if this gets approved and they provide us with a plan of action, that everybody's going to be moved to a hotel. So we just want to be clear on that.
But it does allow for them to be held accountable.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. And that's why we want something in writing, because you can hold somebody accountable when they tell you what they're going to do. And another clarification is, we're asking for it within, 2 days. And the hot water is an item that we ask to be rectified, within 2 days. But some things they may not be able to do, but at least they have provided us with a plan. And then they need to give us a time frame as far as each item, what they plan to do. And it may be a case where we have to come together and sit down and do a revision or amendment, but we have something in writing. And as Moses said, it may get to the point where we have to issue citations because they didn't do what they put in their action plan.
Within reasonable time. Yes.
Yes, sir.
I know Anna has her hand up.
I think she was clapping. All right.
Oh,
Any?
and I just have one more comment. I'm sorry. And our goal is to get this approved and passed, because if you experience what happened in February, then you know firsthand what it's like not to have water, not to have hot water, not to have power. And every resident in the city of Austin deserves to have the minimum standards. So we are trying to put something together to hold property owners accountable.
Thank you, Keisha. I have one question, actually. If we can clarify a little bit of what are the steps to follow. We're having this public meeting to receive some feedback from the public. What can we expect the steps to follow from here?
Now, when you say steps to follow from here, do you mean as far as the timeline for
Exactly. Yes, the timeline that is available.
So Moses, help me out here if I miss anything. So our next process is to wait for all of the comments and recommendations. We will review them. We have to take it to our leadership. It has to go to legal. As Moses mentioned, we have to go to the Building Standards Commission. We have to obtain their recommendations and go back to the drawing board, maybe, and include any recommendations that they have, and then get it all together in a final draft and go before City Council. So we have that timeline on the presentation, but just bear in mind that could be a shifting. So now we're in the month of April, we're taking in public comment. But if we send it to legal or we go before BSC and they say, well, no, we don't like that, or no, you need to add this in, we have to have time to make those amendments. So even though we say May or June or June through August, just bear in mind that it may shift a little bit, but our target is still going to be September 1st. And please, any questions or comments that you may have, because I appreciate you all taking the time to log in today. And this is your platform. This is your forum to give us your ideas, to give us feedback. And if you want to do it where, I don't know, maybe you don't want to give your name. Maybe there's an avenue that you can do that. Some people are hesitant, but please, don't be quiet. Don't sit back. This is your opportunity to give us your recommendation.
Excellent. Does anybody else have quick questions you guys have for us that we can speak up for you? Again, ways that you can relay those questions are putting them on the chat. Also, if you feel that there's something that has been left unsaid, you're able to email it to us. The information, you can find it on the chat. You can find any additional supplemental content that you might be able to need, and it'll be available for you in the chat that you can use.
Lucetta, we had a question.
Let me see.
So, the first one was unfit for occupancy. I think of a scenario where it gets flooded, 2013, 2015 floods, or a major water leak. I don't know if y'all heard in the news, have seen about Round Rock, some townhomes or condos that they got damaged, and these homeowners have not been able to go back. So it wasn't unfit for them for occupancy. That's what we would cite, and we would ask for an action plan. Um, then it's electrical, then it's plumbing, and then it's water heating, and then it's the heat supply. So those are the things that, besides the plumbing, that we need to be able to cite as hazards and ask for an action plan. So I told you all the scenario about everything's fine. They have hot water, they have electricity, but they have no way. They have the chiller system that's not turned on or has a broken part, and they're not providing heat. We're able to cite it. They have gas, they have hot water. They just can't use their electric stove, and they can't use their heat because now that's central, and we're able to cite it because everything else could be working except for the heater and the stove. So we're able to cite that electrical hazard, and so that's why we're trying to make sure we capture all of those violations and acts for an action plan. And like Keisha mentioned, I think I'm going to emphasize in the other meetings, we can't make a hotel happen. We can't say, oh, all rooms are going to be available. No, that's not what we want. What we want is an action plan. But tell us what you're going to do, what you're going to provide us. A sister property. I'm going to move them to vacant units that I have. Um, Scenarios like that. I've already ordered 20 hot plates to solve the electrical stoves for right now. I brought the hot showers, the trailers getting delivered, because one of the things that I had a challenge is she didn't want to send me the action plan because she hadn't confirmed or the cart hadn't gone through on the trailer for the showers. I said, no, I don't need that to have happen, or you're waiting for a PR. I need to know what's gonna happen. We don't need to make sure it's the credit card's gone through, or you're waiting for upper management to approve it. We understand there's scenarios, or for it to get delivered. You know, things can happen, but we're gonna hold them more accountable if there's an action plan, and here we are 3 days later. No heaters have been provided, no skillets, no cooking has provided, no hotel accommodations, things like that we're going to need in that action plan.
Thank
Hopefully
you.
I answered that.
Yeah, and I just wanted to lay out the question that you just addressed so that the interpreters can also get that to the other languages. The question was, can you tell us the list of code change topics again? And you just did a run through of those changes. Thank you, Moses.
This will be posted, right? It's already in public comment, isn't it already, Isis?
Yeah, so that's a good point. My internet's been kind of tricky today, so hopefully I don't cut off. But if people have any more input that they'd like to have, we do have a page called publicinput.com/IPMC 2021, and you can add your feedback. It can be anonymous. You can go ahead and add it in that page. If you don't have any more comments or questions, you can go ahead and that. But thanks, Keisha, Moses, and Diedrich. It sounds like the major change for the International Property Maintenance Code is to have an action plan and accommodations for these particular codes that we have outlined. Again, that public input page also has the annotated changes in red that you can see. It's a PDF, and then there's also a copy of this presentation available for view. So if anybody this was pretty short meeting, but if anybody has any questions, I'll allow a few seconds. If not, then we'll adjourn the meeting. And this meeting has been recorded, so you can share with your friends, colleagues, roommates, friends and family members who maybe are interested in property maintenance code and what the city is doing to make sure that people are living within the minimum standards. So thanks to Anna for asking questions, and thanks to those who tuned in after work and after their evening to learn more about property maintenance codes. Thanks for your time, and I think we'll wrap it up